important trusts in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. I will now call on Senator Kim Wilkerson, Attorney General and Minister of Justice, to come and take the oath.
I, Kim Ramona Wilkerson, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to law.
Thank you. If you'd like to sign. Please sign that on this one. Welcome to you. Welcome back to the Senate, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
Item number 2, the confirmation of minutes. I will call on Vice President Karen Bell.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, the 24th of July, 2024 be taken as read.
Thank you. I do have a correction, and that is on page 2, and that is on the where I gave, it was written that it was not condolences, but congratulations on Mr. Place. That's the only correction that I saw. Where my comment was made about Mr. Place, it is written as congratulations to the family, as opposed to, I would just like to make that correction.
So,
That's all.
Madam President, subject to that correction, I move that the minutes of Wednesday, the 24th July, 2024 be confirmed.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The minutes are confirmed. Thank you, Senator Karen Bell. Moving on to messages. Mrs. Beal.
There are no messages, Madam President.
Thank you. Item number 4, reports of committees. There are none. Item number 5, announcements. Senators, I do have an announcement regarding the questions that were presented by Senator DeCuccio. And my ruling is that the scope of the questions are too wide and can be rewritten and redirected to specific ministries and be resubmitted at the next meeting. Senator DeCuccio, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for your considered ruling. Would you allow me to just make a few statements of fact for the record with respect to the timings of the questions and the government response?
You may, as long as it's brief.
Yes. Just for the record, the questions were submitted last Monday to provide ample time for any consideration and feedback that we might get to them. And my understanding is the government's concerns with the questions were made very late yesterday. So you can understand, Madam President, we did not have time to reconsider and adjust them as appropriate. And thank you. We respectfully respect your ruling. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator DeCuccio. We'll move on. Item number 5, announcements. There are additional announcements, and they're in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the spokesperson for finance. Senator Hudson, I believe you have at least 3 announcements.
Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the Tax Reform Commission financial statements February 12th through October 21, 2018. Madam President, I also hereby present for the information of Senate the Banks and Deposit Companies Restricted Banks Amendment Order 2024 made by the Minister of Finance and acting on the advice of the Bermuda Monetary Authority in exercise of the powers conferred by Section 14.3 and 5C of the Banks and Deposit Companies Act 1999. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the investment business recognized bodies, reporting accountants, facts and matters of material significance, regulations 2024, made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 86(1) of the Investment Business Act 2003. And finally, Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the investment business recognized bodies, recognition requirements, regulations 2024 made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 67(1) of the Investment Business Act 2003. And of course, senators may access copies on their tablets and on the parliamentary website. Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you,
President.
Senator Hudson. I believe there's a final announcement that's in the name of the Junior Minister, Senator Leslie Robinson, the Junior Minister for Economy and Labor.
Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the position paper on progressing Bermuda's minimum hourly wage. Senators may access copies of on their tablets and on the parliamentary website.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Item number 6, notices of motion, there are none. Item number 7, petitions, there are none. Item number 8, statements. We do have 2 statements. The first one is in the name of Minister, the Honorable Owen Darrell, the Minister of Tourism, Culture, and Sport. Minister Darrell, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam President. Thank you. Madam President, over the past few months, we have witnessed an abundance of sporting events in the country where our athletes have proudly competed at both domestic and international levels. Today, Madam President, I will provide a brief recap of some of these key events. Madam President, this summer, the Olympics and Paralympics were held in Paris, France, where Bermuda was proudly represented in both events. Our athletes and staff showcased remarkable dedication, representing our island with distinction. Although we did not secure a medal, all athletes delivered outstanding performances. Dame Flora Duffy, our reigning Olympic champion, competed in her 5th Olympic Games. She dominated the swim and much of the bike ride, ultimately finishing 5th overall, a result that filled the country with pride. Also, congratulations to Erica Harley and Tyler Smith, Janai Parent-Chief, Jack Harvey, Emma Harvey, Dara Azedia, and Adriana Penderbrook, who all represented Bermuda in Paris. I did have the honor, Madam President, of being at the stadium to witness Janai's debut, and the pride that we felt after each of his jumps was immense. A few weeks later, Madam President, the Paralympics took place at the same venue in Paris. Our female athlete of the year, Jessica Lewis and Yushea De Silva Andrade, represented Bermuda in athletics and bocce, respectively. Like their fellow Olympians, both athletes made Bermuda proud and kept us on the edge of our seats with excitement and anticipation of possible medals. Yushea was our top finisher, securing an impressive 4th place in the bocce bronze medal match. Congratulations to all athletes who represented Bermuda in both Olympics and Paralympics, and to those who worked behind the scenes to make it all possible. Madam President, when you hear me say that sport matters, and this is to us as a ministry, we ensure this by backing it with investments that help our elite athletes pursue their dreams and making competing in the Olympics a reality. This year, $150,000 was provided to the Bermuda Olympic Association, and the Department of Sport and Recreation also funded elite athlete sponsorship with over $189,000. I am thrilled that we were able to make this funding available for our athletes. Madam President, our national sports of cricket and football also had some exciting developments this summer. As the domestic season draws to a close, I'd like to acknowledge the season winners in the Bermuda Cricket Board's various divisions. In the 50-over Premier Division, the winners were St. George's Cricket Club. In the 50-over First Division winners was Warwick Workmen's Club. Madam President, this year the Bermuda Cricket Board reintroduced Women's T10 Festival, making a positive step for the growth and opportunities for women in cricket. The T10 women's winners, Warwick Workmen's, and additionally, the BCB has partnered with the ICC to launch a 10-week Women's Cricket Softball Festival for participants aged 13 and up. The first festival is due to take place by October 31st of this year. Madam President, the T20 League season concluded this past Sunday, and Bailey's Bay clinching the Premier Division T20 League without having to play due to wet weather conditions. Congratulations to the team and the staff at Bailey's Bay. How much it hurts me to say that, Madam President. Cricket fans also have one more opportunity to enjoy the game, though. On Sunday, September 29th, the BCB will conclude its season with a T20 knockout tournament finals doubleheader at the National Sports Center Northfield. Bailey's Bay, Somerset, Cleveland County, and St. George's will all be taking part, and I encourage everyone to come out and support this exciting event. On the international front, the BCB senior men's national team will compete in the first round of the ICC Americas T20 qualifiers in December. 9 teams will compete, with 3 teams advancing to the final round in August of 2025. I would like to take this moment to thank the Bermuda Cricket Board Executive and its member clubs for their dedication in keeping the game of cricket alive and thriving on the island. Madam President, on September 1st, the Bermuda Football Association kicked off its domestic league with the annual Charity Cup. PHC, the league champions, secured a convincing 6-0 victory over the FA Cup champion St. George's Cricket Club. Since the inception of the Charity Cup, the BFA has consistently made donations to various charities throughout Bermuda. This year, the Eliza Doolittle Society will receive a donation on behalf of PHC, the 2024-25 Charity Cup champions. Congratulations to PHC on their impressive win. As the league prepares to kick off this weekend, I'd like to extend my congratulations to newcomers in the Premier League, my team, Devonshire Colts, as well as Wolves, on their promotion. Devonshire Colts had an incredible season last year, finishing with an undefeated league record. And I wish both teams, along with all participating teams, a successful and exciting season ahead. On the international stage, Madam President, we must highlight the thrilling final of our under-14 boys and their performance that they gave us in the CFU Championship. Although they narrowly lost in a penalty shootout, they exited the tournament in style. Special congratulations go to head coach Bashan Blanchette, his team, and staff, particularly Gian Wolf, top goal scorer, Xavier Thomas Bassett, top goalkeeper, and Carter Thomas, most valuable player. Looking ahead, Madam President, our senior men's national team will play 2 league games here in Bermuda in October. That will be October 12th and October 15th at the National Sports Center. I look forward to seeing everyone come out and cheer on our Gombe Warriors as they showcase our national pride at the stadium. Madam President, on September 21st, the Bermuda Hockey Federation hosted the opening games of the Pan Am Challenge Cup at the National Sports Center. When the Bermuda Hockey Federation approached the government of Bermuda over a year and a half ago for assistance in hosting this event, we were more than happy to award $60,000 and in-kind services to help make this tournament a reality. This tournament brings together top field hockey teams across Pan America, including Brazil, Guyana, Mexico, Peru, Paraguay, for an exciting display of athleticism, teamwork, and sportsmanship. It promises to be a world-class event, offering a vibrant atmosphere and a unique opportunity to celebrate the global sport of field hockey right here in Bermuda. This international tournament is currently ongoing, with the final scheduled for this Saturday, September 28th at the National Sports Center. We wish Team Bermuda the best of luck as they compete for the gold. I was in attendance last evening. I will also be in attendance on Friday as well as Saturday. Madam President, I could speak endlessly about the incredible impact of sports in our country, but we'd be here all day. Our national sports governing bodies are doing an exceptional job across all sports, both domestically and internationally. As we all know, sports brings joy, promotes health, inspires national pride, serving as a vital thread in the fabric of our community. As we enter another sporting season, Madam President, I wish all of our athletes, both young and experienced, continued success and achievement. As you participate, I will continue to support, whether by attending both local and overseas events to cheer you on, or by greeting you at the airport to welcome you home. We are a proud sporting nation, and the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Sport understands that sport matters. I remain committed to focusing on and investing in sports so that we can reach our full potential as a country. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. The second statement is in the name of Senator Leslie Robinson and it's a position paper on progressing Bermuda's minimum hourly wage. Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I am pleased today to introduce to members of the Senate the position paper on progressing Bermuda's minimum hourly wage. Madam President, as the members of the Senate may recall, the first statutory minimum hourly wage rate for Bermuda was established on the 1st of June 2023 by the Employment Minimum Hourly Wage Order 2023, which set the minimum hourly wage rate for employees within Bermuda at the rate of $16.40. Madam President, the purpose of the position paper is to outline the government's commitment to the progression of the minimum hourly wage rate beyond the current $16.40 and to propose a framework in which this can be achieved. Madam President, while the establishment of a minimum hourly wage in Bermuda was a significant step towards ensuring fair compensation for employees and for the reduction of income equality, a further step needs to be taken to assure that employees can maintain a reasonable standard of living and their purchasing power is not diminished while the cost of everyday goods and services rise. Madam President, the government supports the position paper's proposal to progress statutory minimum hourly wage rate every 2 years by the annual average rate of inflation, utilizing the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, as the indicative measure, capped at a 2.5% per year. Using this methodology, the newly proposed statutory minimum wage rate to take effect in 2025 will be between $16.81 and $17.23. Madam President, the CPI is often used as a benchmark for adjusting minimum hourly wages as it tracks the average change over time in the prices paid by consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services, which includes but is not limited to essential items such as food, housing, clothing, transportation, and healthcare. Since the minimum hourly wage is intended to help workers afford basic living expenses, by linking the minimum hourly wage increases to the CPI, albeit capped, the minimum hourly wage can be adjusted to better keep pace with inflation. Madam President, the position paper details the government's intention to enhance the wage floor over time. Why the CPI is the most appropriate method to utilize to progress the statutory minimum hourly wage rate. Those most likely to be impacted by the progression of the statutory minimum hourly wage rate and the role that the Wage Commission and the government will play in the monitoring and evaluation of the continued progression of the statutory minimum hourly wage rate in Bermuda. Madam President, it should be noted that in its 2021 report on the proposed minimum hourly wage rate, the Wage Commission posited that as there is an employment census counting the number of jobs and the rate of pay for those jobs annually, the minimum wage can be reviewed annually. Additionally, the International Labor Organization's 2021 global wage rate highlights that over half of the countries with statutory minimum wages adjust their wages at least every 2 years. Madam President, when drafting the position paper, the views of the Wage Commission were sought and considered, and agreement on the intention to progress the minimum hourly wage rate by linking it with the CPI was reached. Madam President, as the government continues to strengthen the protections afforded to employees within Bermuda, adopting a transparent and consultative process for implementing and monitoring the minimum wage hourly wage adjustments will foster inclusivity and avoid the erosion of the minimum hourly wage rate to allow employees the opportunity to maintain income equality. Madam President, the ministry would like to thank all Senate members for the opportunity to make this address today. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Robinson. Moving on with our the next item is the introduction of bills. There are none. The first reading of public bills, item number 10. The following public bills have been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and are read for the first time. Their titles are respectively the Customs Tariff Amendment Act 2024, Governor's Recommendation Signified, and Water Resources Amendment Act 2024. Item number 11, first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, the question period. Senators, we will entertain questions on the statements that have been read this morning. The first one being in the name of Honorable Owen Darrell, the sporting recap. Would any senator care to ask any questions on this first statement? Hearing none, then we'll move on to the second statement. Would any senator care to ask questions? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wholeheartedly agree with the concept of increasing the minimum wage in accordance with the Consumer Price Index. I'd just like some clarification so I fully understand what I'm reading. So the increase is adopted every second year. So if in the first year the inflation is 2.5% and the second year it's 2.5%, is the increase at the end of the second year 2.5% or is it 5%? I just want to get clarification from the bill.
Madam President, I was just asking if the senator can repeat the question, please.
Senator
Sure. So from my reading, the minimum wage increase is adopted every second year. So by way of example, if the inflation rate in the first year is 2.5% and the inflation rate in the second year is 2.5%, is the increase at the end of the second year going to be a 5% increase or a 2.5% increase?
A maximum of 5%.
Thank you. So if I can just ask a follow-up question. So why wouldn't this be adopted every year then? Why is it every second year when the total of those 2 years is added together, if you will?
So let me clarify, Madam President, a maximum of 5% over a 2-year period.
Mhm.
But it will be adopted annually
every 2 years.
Right, okay, so I guess my question is, why wouldn't it be adopted annually in accordance with the inflation rate annually? Because if it's only adopted every second year, then the person is going to be um, not benefiting from the rate of inflation from the first year. So I guess I just, yeah, intuitively, it doesn't make sense to me if we're keeping in line with inflation and inflation is going up year by year, why we wait every second year to make that increase rather than doing it on an annual basis.
Madam President, this is what was recommended, and it was recommended in accordance with what happens in many other countries.
Thank you, Senator
Thank you,
Robinson.
Senator.
Senator White.
No,
No further questions.
it doesn't intuitively make sense to me, but I hear the response from the senator, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator White. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Hearing none, we will then move on with our agenda, and that is the orders of the day. The first order of the day is consideration of the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Benefits Order 2024, and that's in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, spokesperson for Finance. Senator Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning again.
Good morning to you.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now take under consideration the draft order entitled the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Benefits Order 2024.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. Carry on.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the tabling of the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Benefits Order 2024 on September 20th, 2024 reflects this government's resolute and unwavering commitment to improving the quality of life of our senior citizens. Madam President, you will recall that in the government's 2020 election platform, the government promised to put our seniors first and to institute annual cost of living increases for social insurance pensions linked to the rate of inflation to help lessen the hardships that too many of our seniors now endure. Madam President, Bermuda, like most other countries, provides retired individuals with a combination of a social insurance benefit from the Contributory Pension Fund, or CPF, and a mandatory occupational pension from their employer. In a perfect world, the social insurance benefit should provide a first tier or basic pension, which a second tier or occupational pension would most likely supplement. Through no fault of their own, currently, a number of retired persons are not receiving an occupational pension and are therefore relying on the social insurance benefit as their sole source of income. Madam President, this situation could be better, and the government continues to do its utmost to ensure that seniors who rely heavily on their social insurance benefits are cared for suitably. Madam President, notwithstanding the above, the CPF benefit provides an important base retirement income. Currently, the maximum pension paid under the CPF remains around 26% of the median annual gross earnings for Bermudians, as indicated in the Bermuda Job Market Employment Brief produced by the Department of Statistics. This compares closely to the UK, where the full basic state pension as a percentage of average earnings is around 24%. Madam President, the purpose of this order is to increase pensions and other benefits under the Contributory Pensions Act 1970 by 2.4% as of August 16, 2024, when increases are typically made to the benefits. Per the government actuaries, this 2.4% increase in benefits would have a minor negative impact to the Contributory Pension Fund. Madam President, 5 types of benefits payable under the Contributory Pensions Act 1970. All the pensions and allowances will be increased by 2.4%. These pensions and allowances are as follows: contributory old age pension, contributory widows and widowers allowance, contributory disability benefit, non-contributory old age pension, and non-contributory disability benefit. Madam President, the current basic contributory pension is $1,152 per month. The maximum contributory pension currently payable, including additional increments added to the basic pension, is approximately $1,673 per month. Altogether, some 14,708 persons currently receive benefits under the Act. The proposed 2.4% increase will raise the basic contributory pension to $1,179 per month, and with additional increments, the maximum benefit will increase to approximately $1,713 per month. The retroactive pension payments for the 2.4% will be included in the October 15, 2024 payment dating back to August 16, 2024. Thereafter, beneficiaries should expect to see the 2.4% increase in their regular monthly payment on the 15th of each month. Madam President, the 2.4% increase marks the 16th pension increase that the Progressive Labor Party government has put through in its time in government. Honorable members are reminded that the former government made seniors wait 5 years for a pension increase, which is the longest period of time between increases since the UBP was in office, when pensions were increased every 2 years. Since taking office in November 1998 and now, this government has put through 15 increases prior to this increase. Madam President, in every case, the benefit increase has either exceeded the prevailing inflation rate or has been in line with the Consumer Price Index, thereby placing seniors' pensions in good stead. Madam President, honorable members are advised that based on the CPI, the cost of living has increased by a further 2.4% since the last increase was granted. Therefore, the proposed benefit increase fully covers the prevailing rate of inflation. Madam President, the 2024 increase in benefits would normally be accompanied by a corresponding increase in contributions by an actuarially recommended rate of 2.5% above the benefits increase rate. Madam President, while contribution rates were last increased in 2018 by 4.2%, the Ministry of Finance has considered the CPF's position, and it is anticipated that the fund can withstand a year's delay in contribution increases. However, it will be critical to adjust the contributions in August 2025. Madam President, honorable members will recall that in the 2018 throne speech, government announced that Bermuda's social insurance system will be changed from a fixed rate contribution to one based on a percentage of income. Therefore, it is proposed that contribution increases will be incorporated into proposed changes in the framework. Madam President, in that regard, I note the important work done over the last 3 years by the Pension Reform Committee. This committee includes officials from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Funds Investment Committee, assisted by consultants McKinsey & Company and TELUS Health, formerly LifeWorks, which has been assessing the current state of the contributory pension fund while also evaluating options to address the government pension funds. Madam President, the pension reform work is developing options to sustainably address the deficit and secure future benefits for Bermuda's people. Once we finalize that work, increases to pension contribution levels will form part of the reforms. Madam President, as has been stated previously, the government also intends to shift to a percent of income contribution model for the contributory pension fund. The contemplated changes are consistent with the overwhelming majority of Tier 1 pension systems globally. Based on the results of continued actuarial analysis, the Pension Reform Committee will put forth options to achieve a path to pension sustainability for the Bermuda government. Madam President, as of March 31, 2024, the fund had net assets of over $2.25 billion, representing approximately 10 times the value of benefits paid in this fiscal year, 2023-2024. The effect of this is that if the CPF received no further contributions, it could still continue to pay out pensions at the prevailing rate for almost 12 years. However, the reality is that contributions will continue and will be increased from time to time. Consequently, prudent investment of the pension fund assets is an essential factor in the fund's financial position. Madam President, in this regard, the government's investment strategy for pension fund assets is achieving good results. As of March 31, 2024, the contributory pension fund investments stood at $2.1 billion. The nominal rate of return for the 10 years preceding March 31, 2024 has been 5.6%. Madam President, as evidenced by the 2020 actuarial report tabled in this Honorable House on February 4, 2022, the viability of the fund in the short to medium term is good, with the fund being positive for the next 21 years until 2044. However, recognizing the long-term challenges with pensions generally, the Ministry will continue to closely monitor the performance of the fund. It should also be noted that the funding policy for the fund is not based on full actuarial funding, but based on sustainable funding. That is, contributions plus investment income should cover benefits and administration expenses on an annual basis, while the fund builds up sufficient reserves to cover several years of benefits and expenses to withstand future adverse circumstances. Madam President, despite the encouraging short to medium term outlook on the fund, what is clearly evident from the latest actuarial review is that Bermuda, like most of the developed world, is faced with the challenges associated with the growth of an aging population. This increase in our seniors will obviously place a more significant strain on the country's pension system. It is therefore essential that the government continues to closely monitor the performance of the fund and our overall pension arrangements to ensure the long-term sustainability of the fund. However, taking care of our seniors is a priority for us. We remain confident, Madam President, that we will continue to strike the right balance between social and fiscal responsibility. In closing, I wish to again assure members and, more importantly, current and future pensioners that the government is sensitive to the challenges facing pension plans of this nature. We will take the appropriate steps to enhance the benefits paid from the National Pension Plan, as well as ensure the fund has the ongoing ability to pay for such benefits. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator DeGuto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator, for that brief. Some good information in there. Those of us in the OBA who are knocking on doors and trying to win the support of people are inundated, as I'm sure those in the PLP are, with comments and questions from seniors, former public servants, former members of the uniformed services as to what is going on with the pensions. On a daily basis, we receive emails about this. So clearly, this is an important increase for many members of the public because, as was stated in the senator's brief, it's an important component of people's retirement plans. So we're glad to see it. We are still very concerned about the lack of progress in reform. We keep hearing about it. The senator covered several areas of potential reform, but we would really like to know, does the government have a specific date in mind by which it plans to implement this reform? We would really like to know what the public's response to the proposed reforms have been for the CPF, which is what this is about, the social insurance or contributory pension fund. We would really like to see, Madam President, the actual latest actuarial report so that we could assess the details to make a more in-depth analysis and a more detailed response. What we know now is that the money will run out. And for someone such as myself who's still working, or people who are perhaps very early in their retirement, until changes are made, they should not plan on these funds being around past the mid-40s. And it's really hard for us to see if these promises being made by the government can be met until we see the actual details. And we've been hearing about there will be reform. Reform is in the works. And that's why we would really encourage the government to set a date by which that reform will be specifically launched and announced, presented to the public for consultation. And frankly, Madam President, so people can plan. My wife and I were trying to plan. I'm not yet 50, but soon, it's time to think about retirement. In fact, it's probably past time. And I know that we're luckier than most. There are many who will be planning quite carefully, quite detailed, and they need to know what the government plans are so that this can be an important part of their retirement toolkit. I think that generally covers my points, Madam President. So when will we get the actuarial report? When will this proposed reform actually happen? And when will the public be consulted so that they get the opportunity to provide feedback and plan their own retirements? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator DeGuto. Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. For starters, I'd like to say that I support the increase in the 2.4% benefit for retirees, although, as I've expressed before, as a senior myself, I have a conflict of interest because I'll be a beneficiary of the increase. But what I don't agree with is deferring the increase in the funding to August of 2025. I know from these types of plans that if you don't match the benefits with the funding, this can cause an issue. So my question to the junior minister would be, what is the current deficit in the contributory pension fund, and what financial impact or increase will this 2.4% have on the increasing deficit to the fund? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. I would just like to acknowledge, before I ask if any other senator would like to speak, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Kershawn Gibbons, the Director of Social Insurance, who's in the chamber, and Dr. Jeff Smith, the Acting Director of the Department of Energy and Natural Resources, and also Mr. Dean Lemer. Oh, as a Principal Customs Officer, welcome to you, sir. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And as my colleague stated, we do support the increase. My one question to the junior minister is how confident is she in the sustainability of these calculations when it comes to the amount of ratepayers and the amount of contributors that will be on the island? Because as we know, young folks and young people in Bermuda, by and large, I can't speak for all, but by and large, many of us here on the doorstep that they are either staying overseas after school or looking to move overseas to pursue other activities, other lifestyle, whatever they're looking to pursue. So a lot of these calculations are based on, I guess, a numerical value of how many future contributors are going to be here when we know that we have a working population whole of 8,000 people. So my question is that what contingencies are in place if these calculations are based off of a certain number of future contributors and that contributor number continues to decline with our birth rate and you have more people set to retire and claim than you do paying in, and we haven't seen enough changes. Does she also believe that creating a sliding scale will mitigate the loss of contributors that we're seeing in the actual pension scheme? And what are the government's kind of foresight in that department to make sure that not only do we not place a huge or a much larger burden on those coming up who are not looking at retirement yet, but are looking to purchase homes, looking to purchase vehicles, looking to start families, that we don't inundate them because they have to make up an extra or more increased benefit contribution than theirs before them because of the numbers of people that are leaving or not being retained or not being enticed to return home. So that's just my few questions, and I look forward to the answers. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Tucker, OBA leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. um, I just have one question, and I would like to know. I mean, we're talking about funding and the impact on the contributory pension fund. I would like to know if the junior minister can give some information about the full impact of the funding that came out of the CPF as it relates to COVID, because I mean, obviously that's going to have an impact on what's left in the fund as well, in order to pay benefits even in the future. So, and with not having the actuarial report, it's a little difficult to understand, to know. So, I would like to know if she can give that information as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. We will give Senator an opportunity to get responses to those questions that have been asked. Senator Hudson, when you're ready.
Oh, yes, thank you, Madam President. I can get started on my responses. As it pertains to the comments made by Senator Ducuto, I can say generally that at this time, we are actually progressing the work of the Pension Reform Committee, sorry, is progressing the work. They're looking at the proposed changes to the existing pension framework for the Public Service Superannuation Fund. And so, as part of that exercise, we're actually having conversations with the union membership on plan changes, which have been previously approved by Cabinet. However, it is important to note that the intention is to actually implement these changes before we commence the broader review of the contributory pension fund. And so, although that we don't have all of the answers that members would prefer to have, those details are forthcoming. There was a question about the current deficit in terms of CPF. And again, the 2023 actuary review is actually being completed during this time. I think it's also important to highlight there was some mention of the potential change to a progressive contribution system. And I want to highlight that actually most major jurisdictions, which would actually include, I believe, the US and the Canada, they already have a system like this in place. And so this will actually bring Bermuda in line with what would actually be considered a more equitable system. I know that there was some questions about future contributions and the trends that obviously have implications on the future fund. However, I do not have the specifics, which will satisfy the questions that have been posed by members today. I do note that in the brief, I did indicate that an increase in benefits would have a minor negative impact, and to what degree we would see based on the actual reports that will be coming at a later date.
Senator White, you have an additional question or clarification?
I do, Madam President. Thank you. So, Junior Minister, if you could provide the most current deficit that we have recorded, so it may not be 2023, but certainly the most recent one that has been recorded in the government financial statements, or the.
Thank you, Senator White. And while the senator is getting responses, I would just like to acknowledge another individual who's here with us in the chamber, and that is Mrs. Gwen Johnson, Parliamentary Counsel. Welcome to you all. Senator DeCuto.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to ask a clarifying question with regard to the senator's statement that the Pension Reform Committee is still progressing the work of the Public Service Superannuation Fund, the public servant pension. My understanding, what I heard, I'd like her to confirm if I heard it correctly, is that a proposed set of reforms has been approved by the cabinet, but they are still in some sort of discussions with the public service. So if I've heard that correctly, if she could perhaps clarify what those discussions consist of. For example, are they in negotiations with the union, or have they simply made presentations and are still collecting feedback, or whatever the particular current state might be? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator DeCuto. For the listening audience and senators, Senator is getting responses from the team in the Senate chambers who can answer some of the questions that have been asked. Forward.
Madam President, I am still awaiting just clarity on the latest CPF deficit that we've recorded. Um, would we like to proceed? And I can commit to providing those answers, given that most persons are still in support of the increased benefit, if that's suitable for you.
Yes, I think that's agreeable. So you will provide the answers
Yes, I will get.
later in the meeting.
Yes, I'll get the latest CPF deficit
Thank you.
details.
You may proceed with your bill then.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the said draft order be approved and that the following message be sent to Her Excellency the Governor. May it please Your Excellency, the Senate, having had under consideration a draft order entitled the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Benefits Order 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance under the provisions of Section 37 of the Contributory Pensions Act 1970, has the honor to inform Your Excellency that the Senate has approved the said draft order.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson, and the draft order. A message will be sent to the governor. Thank you, and thank you all senators who have asked questions of this bill. We will now move on then with the next item on our agenda for the orders of the day, and that is the Customs Tariff Amendment Act 2024, and that is also in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the spokesperson for Finance. Senator Hudson, when you've caught your breath, you can present your bill.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I would like to move that the provisions of Standing Order 25 be granted so that the Senate may proceed with the second reading of the Customs Tariff Amendment Act 2024, along with the Water Resources Amendment Act 2024.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Customs Tariff Amendment Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to the second reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, honorable members are requested now to give consideration to the bill entitled Customs Tariff Amendment Act 2024. Madam President, the bill proposes to amend the fifth schedule of the Customs Tariff Act 1970 for the purpose of lowering the rate of duty for diesel and fuel oils used by Belco for the production of electricity. Madam President, honorable members will recall that on July 8 this year, the Regulatory Authority of Bermuda ordered increases to all Belco facilities' charges and energy charges. The Regulatory Authority has estimated that as a result of the upgraded charges, average overall residential rates will increase by 8.59%, commercial rates by an average of 8.94%, and demand larger users' rates by an average of 8.23%. Madam President, in the 2024-2025 budget statement in support of the estimates of revenue and expenditure, the government acknowledged that there are urgent needs in our community, including the need for relief from high electricity prices. In order to mitigate the impact of the Revenue Authority sanctioned Belco charges on consumers, the bill proposes to reduce the duty revenue gained through fuel duty in the amount of $10 million with effect from July 19, 2024 through the 31st of March, 2025. Madam President, the bill has had statutory effect from the date of its first reading on the 19th of July, 2024, in accordance with the Provisional Collection of Revenue Act 1975. On that date, the duty rate for Belco diesel and fuel oil was reduced from 20 cents per liter to 8 cents per liter. In this way, the government ensured that the rates of duty for Belco diesel and fuel oils were provisionally lowered in time for the effective date of the base rate increase on 1st of August 2024. I should also note that the governor's declaration approving the statutory effect from the date of the first reading of the bill was received in the House of Assembly on the 18th of July, 2024. Madam President, this government intends that these new lower duty rates for Belco diesel and fuel oils should continue for the time being in force for the ongoing benefit of consumers. It is intended, therefore, that the bill should be enacted by the legislature during the current term to avoid cessation of the application of the provisions of the Provisional Collection of Revenue Act 1975 and a reversal of these urgently needed duty rate reductions. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. And before I open the floor for questions, I would just like to also acknowledge the presence in the chamber of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, Ms. Nelina Salik, and the Permanent Secretary for the AG's Chambers Ministry of Justice, Ms. Gina Hurst Mabry. Welcome to you. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator DeCuto, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, we just were talking about the pensions increases, and that was a hot topic on people's minds, on their wallets. And clearly, as the temperature gets hotter, the Belco bills get hotter. So this is also a very hot topic. Now, it's a little bit of a technical topic, and I'm not going to lie, Madam President, I had to break out my spreadsheet and pick through
Goodness.
my Belco bills to run some numbers. So if you don't mind, I might just try to provide a little more detail on some of the moving pieces of this, because the fuel adjustment rate is a component of the bill which includes the impact of the government taxes on Belco that this is reducing. But there's a lot of other moving pieces in the Belco bill, and I just wanted to highlight those out so people could understand and see the context. And so if you don't mind, I might just provide some numbers. Thank you, Madam President.
You may.
So the bill is broken out in what we'll call a variable part and a fixed part. So first of all, everyone's paying $30 odd a month just for having your connection. Okay, that's the facilities charge. From July to August, that went up 13%. Doesn't matter how much money, I mean, how much electricity you use. That part just went up 13%, like $4.50 on everyone's bill. The other part, and the senator mentioned, is that the RA had approved an increase to Belco's per kilowatt rate. We might call it like the base rate is another language. And now that rate varies depending on how much you use. We actually have a particular oddity here in Bermuda that the more you use, the more you pay per unit of electricity used. Now, I don't know about you, but normally if I go buy a 12 pack of paper towels, I pay less per paper towel than if I buy a 6-pack. But anyway, this is how we're doing electricity. So it's hard for any individual to work out what that increase would be to them. So I've created two examples, Madam President. What I would call a small user, very small user, who uses 250 kilowatt hours per month. And that's within what Belco calls the block one, or their lowest per kilowatt hour rate. So that ratepayer, first of all, is going to pay, like I mentioned, 13.5% more on the facilities. And I misspoke. The actual increase for facilities is like more like $7 or $8. And they're going to pay 13% more just on the base rate. So Belco is making, and that's the bit of the income that sticks to Belco that doesn't go back out in taxes or fuel or whatever. So per unit of electricity used for that user, Belco is making 13% more per kilowatt hour. So it's good that the fuel adjustment rate is now down because of the tax, but just people need to understand that Belco is making more. Then I picked what I would call a medium user. Now, I mean, I've been looking on social media and people have been posting their bills. This may not even be a medium user based on some people's bills, but I picked 900 kilowatt hours a month. So someone using that much, they're going to pay 14% more on the Belco base rate, but 11% less on the fuel adjustment rate, which is where this savings of the tax reduction come in. So I just wanted to give that context. There's a lot of going on. We think that this is fine. This is like a Band-Aid on the problem. But we think that what would be important is if the government could look more holistically at the whole situation of how people are paying for energy in this country, how much money Belco is making, and if the RA was able to take into account what we might call questions of national interest, and as it considers what it approves or doesn't approve for Belco. So it's our understanding that the RA, would like to have some additional powers here to perhaps consider more widely the impacts of its rates. So while we are not opposed to this change, other than of course $10 million less income for the government coffers and so forth, we would really like to see a more holistic view at this, where the RA can really get into like how much money is Belco making, is it the right amount, what are people getting for that money, and so forth. So I hope that that was informative for some of the listeners if they're still awake, Madam President. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Takuto. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then it's move to Junior Minister. Ariana Hudson.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'd like to thank Senator Takuto for his contributions this morning. I think we heard a different debate in the House last week, but I genuinely believe that regardless of which side you sit on, we can all view this as an amendment that provides temporary relief designed to address current economic challenges that many of us are facing. And so again, this is not a tax break for Belco, but I do believe it's a well-designed or well-considered measure that will actually lower, obviously, electricity costs. I'd say stimulate a bit of economic growth, ensure some energy security, and generally provide economic relief for Bermudians. I also recognize, I believe this is an opportunity to start having more conversations about an investment in cleaner, I guess, and more efficient technologies over time. And so, Madam President, with that being said, I move that the bill entitled the Customs Tariff Amendment Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to the second reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled the Customs Tariff Amendment Act 2024 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Hearing none, Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Customs Tariff Amendment Act 2024 do not pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Hudson, and thank you all senators. We'll now move on to item number 3 on our agenda, and that is the second reading of the Water Resources Amendment Act 2024, and that is in the name of Senator Leslie Simmons, the Junior Minister for Home Affairs. Senator Simmons, you have the
Lindsay
floor.
Simmons, thank you. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Water Resource Amendment Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? I do apologize. It is Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Junior Minister for Home Affairs.
Madam President, I am pleased to rise today to introduce the bill entitled the Water Resource Amendment Act 2024. The bill seeks to amend the Water Resource Act 1975, the 1975 Act, to ensure that Bermuda maintains the highest quality of groundwater. Madam President, clean water is fundamental to public health and the sustainability of our natural ecosystems. Ensuring the purity of this essential resource protects our community's health and our island's economy and preserves Bermuda's natural beauty for future generations. Monitoring groundwater quality and the status of the freshwater lenses is crucial to managing the island's water resources. To achieve these goals, a suitable of proposed amendments have been made to the 1975 Act. Madam President, every 5 years, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, DANR, issues approximately 3,142 water rights to manage the use of groundwater from wells for various purposes. These include treating groundwater to make potable water, cooling water for buildings, toilet flushing, and irrigation. We also manage about 871 disposable boreholes for usages including discharging treated wastewater, red stormwater runoffs, and cooling water returned from buildings. Well diggers are also regulated to ensure compliance with the Act. Recent boat sewage regulations create no discharge zones close to shores and within various enclosures, seas, and harbors. Updates to the Act will enable public officers from the departments to enforce these regulations and to assist in identifying habitual offenders who discard sewage within no discharge zones. Madam President, many environmental conscious companies already report pollution spills, monitor and clean up soils and waters as part of their operation licenses. This is currently achieved under the Clean Air Act 1991 and only applies to some typical larger companies that operate control plants. In order to comprehensively address these issues, it is proposed that they should be dealt with under the Water Resource Act. This will ensure that all pollutant activities are controlled to protect human health and environment and the environment, sorry. It is also proposed that new regulations based on existing cleanup guidelines will be applied to any person who pollutes. The new amendment will make it an offense not to report pollution events, will allow for the insurance of population stop orders, and will mandate the need for abate and remediation of pollution ground and groundwater. This will significantly enhance the government's ability to protect the environment. The proposed amendment will provide for the establishment of pollution with the ground to help reduce the pollution of public water resources and of below ground and seawater, create environmental pollution standards under the new regulation. Number two, to increase enforcement powers under the Water Resource Act 1975 and the Water Resources Prevention of Pollution by Sea, Sewage and Boats Regulations 2018. Number three, implement appropriate fees to deter behaviors that pollute the environment. And number four, require the reporting of pollution events to authorities as soon as practical. Additionally, the government will provide best practice guidelines online based on international processes from development jurisdictions to inform the public of how to reduce the risk of pollution spills. Madam President, due to the importance of these amendments, I invite I invite the public to comment on these proposed legislation change over a 3-week period that ended on July 10th, 2024. Comments were largely discussed by Darna and consultants via email, including twice for Bermuda's Environmental Sustainability Task Force, BEST, Bermuda's National Trust, BNT, MediWaste Limited, Skyport, and VEDCO. Additionally, Danner held in-person consultation meetings with stakeholders including Balco, Air Care Limited, and the Ministry of Public Works. Madam President, as a result of these consultations, some minor amendments were made for the bill. For example, offenses were adjusted to discriminate small and large pollution events. Madam President, as a consequence, the Water Resource Act has been specifically amended. Number one, to extend the authority of public officers to enforce existing water resources, prevention of pollution by sewage from boats, regulations 2018 by extending permission to enter upon any property or land to include any boat or vessel. Permission already require provisions of duly authenticated documents and are applicable during reasonable hours only. Number two, to extend authority to public officers to take measures to ascertain if public water, including salt water, is or may become polluted. This is required to allow public officers to use, for example, inert dye tablets to provide culpability of suspected habitual sewage discharge from vessels within no discharge zones under the regulation. It is noted that vessels means any boat other than a large vessel to which the merchant shipping prevention of pollution by sewage and garbage from ships regulations 2015 applies. Number three, to allow public officers power to take soil samples for analysts in addition to existing authorities to take water and influent supplements to establish if the population to the ground is significant to cause population pollution to groundwater or public water. Number four, to allow the minister to require by notice in writing any person responsible for causing pollution to the groundwater or seawater to number one, stop for immediate to prevent further pollution to the environment. For example, issuing a pollution stop order. Number two, to ascertain the extent of the pollution. And number three, to provide the mitigation remediation methods to address said pollution where failure to comply with the directions given should be considered an offense subject to appeal and could result in the seizure of equipment used in contravention of the stop order. Number five, to increase penalties for various offenses in line with current expectations up to a maximum of $20,000. Number six, to include marine outfalls under the definition of works to help manage discharges to the sea. Number seven, to increase the minister's power to make regulations that prescribe concentration thresholds from the population of human and environmental health based on international best practice to determine when the public water, seawater, or any ground is deemed polluted. The concentration threshold for ground would be varied depending on proximate to groundwater, pond, coastline, and critical habitat, and whether the ground is used or zoned for residential commercial purposes. Number eight, to increase the minister's power to make regulations to include the need for landowners in certain cases to record relating to the storage of environmental liabilities on the site, for example, fuels, oil, hazardous chemicals, and to allow for procedures to be recommended to protect the environment against spills. Number nine, to allow a public officer to obtain and record information and statistics on the hydrological and hydrogeological groundwater conditions and any level of pollution, and in the absence of agreement with compensation payable to the landowner for any damages caused by construction of works. Number 10, to extend the authority under the bill to include police officers, including the Royal Bermuda Regiment, Coast Guard Unit, and other persons authorized by the minister in writing. Number 11, to require persons to report to the minister as soon as practical the discharge of any fuel, oil, waste, or hazardous chemicals into the public water, seawater, or ground. Number 12, to issue guidelines to help reduce the risk of such pollution events, including advice on segregation, storage, and disposal of fuel, oil, waste, and other chemicals that may be hazardous to health, the environment, or properties, in addition to the advice on spill preparedness and spill abatement, remediation, monitoring, and reporting recommendations. Madam President, the government's commitment to protecting Bermuda's water quality is unwavering. These proposed amendments and the upcoming regulations are vital steps towards a cleaner, healthier environment for all. It is important to preserve our water resources as it protects our natural ecosystem, our communities' health, and our island's economy, and preserve Bermuda's natural beauty for the future. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons, Junior Minister for Home Affairs. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Tucker, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the Junior Minister for her brief. To the point, we support the bill. So, any measures that are being taken to protect our vital resources, particularly our water, we would certainly be in support of. I do have a couple of questions, though, and they're just general questions. So the first one would be, can the Junior Minister confirm the form of evidence that the authority the form of evidence of authority that the public officer would need to produce to be entitled to enter land or premises for an investigation or survey? So that would be the first question. The second question, if she can clarify why a polluting event would have to be reported to the minister rather than the director or some other relevant authority. That would be helpful just to understand that. And then my third question would be the phrase "reasonable hours" is mentioned several times in the bill. So I would just like to know, how would reasonable hours be defined in relation specifically to this bill? As I said, it's mentioned in several places. Reasonable hours is subjective, so if she can provide some clarity around that. And my last question is, given the seriousness and the critical need to protect our waters and our environment, if the junior minister believes that the penalties, the fines, the increases, the 10,000 and the 20,000 increases are sufficient to deter people from contravening the requirements of the bill, or soon to be the act. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Yes, Vice President Kieran Bell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. In principle, I wanted to indicate that I support this bill. I think it's important for the government to add to its toolkit in terms of its ability to protect our natural environment and prevent pollution, and the pollution stop order in particular, I think, is a very useful tool. I also have some question, I suppose, as to why the cap on a significant pollution event. And in this regard, I would note that in other jurisdictions, the caps have either been significantly increased or in some cases removed, to show, I think, the importance that countries are putting on protecting our natural environment. But that said, I support this bill. I think it's important to keep moving forward in terms of protecting our natural environment, and I think this is an important step. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice President Kieran Bell. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Robinson, Dwayne Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And as my Senate leader indicated, I do support this legislation as well. My concern is mainly around enforcement. We have heard within the community a lot that, the current measures that government has at its disposal to enforce pollutants and various things that this bill is addressing do currently exist in legislation at a weaker form. That's true. But even then, it seems as though we have discrepancies within the community of being able to properly enforce these offenses to our environment. So my question to the junior minister is just how confident does she feel and the ministry feel that with these added penalties, that it will make much of a difference if the enforcement level doesn't seem to be where it is required in order to properly police? And if so, what has the ministry and the junior minister and minister considered in this department of making sure that the enforcement portion of these bills are properly resourced, properly staffed, so that we can crack down a bit on the pollution that we see at our parks, in the beaches, in various things. And also, we see that litigation and various challenges can be difficult as well for the community, as we've seen residents that reside around Belco have been complaining for years about their water being polluted. And we haven't really seen a resolution to that yet under the current legislation. So my question to you, junior minister, is how will those discrepancies be wrapped up better underneath this current iteration that we are now passing today, and whether or not she feels confident it will resolve these community issues? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robinson.
Thank you, Madam President. To answer Senator Tucker's question, they would need to provide their photo ID in order to enter properties. And the next question was why the minister, not the director? And it's because all appeals will have to go to the minister and not the director. and reasonable hours. It was discussed that reasonable hours will reflect the urgency of addressing a pollution incident and the scale of the pollution incident in terms of the environmental impact from a polluting event in order to make enforcers in a timely manner. So reasonable hours would be the urgency of it. Why kept $20,000? That was the advice from the AG's chambers after consideration of other jurisdictions. So that's why the cap is at $20,000. Sound enforcement, Madam President, providing that a vessel has discharged sewage close to the shorelines and within no discharge zone is very difficult because the discharge seacock is located out of sight under the vessel. Since the new regulation was created in 2018, there has been one successful prosecution of sewage discharge, a $8,000 fine for many vessels that are suspected to be discharging within no discharged in Danner will inform the boat owners of the law and provide them with notice to the boat owner. If sewage discharges are still suspected, then additional dye tablets to head tanks would help to provide proof of sewage discharge under certain circumstances. Currently, Danner has had one successful prosecution in 2024 and two within the DPP's office. Three are now being looked at as well. So I believe that we are stepping up and hoping to catch people that are polluting our waters, and we are making sure that we have the people in place to catch people that are breaking the law.
Senator Tucker, you wish to clarify a question or
I have two supplementals,
two
if that's okay.
supplementals? Certainly, you can present them.
Thank you, Madam President. So, thank you to the Junior Minister for stating that a photo ID is required. If because a public officer could be of various categories of individuals, the regiment, the police, sorry, the Coast Guard, the police, and I think the bill says whomever else that the minister identifies. Can she sort of provide some clarity around photo ID? So is this a in the case of Coast Guard, are the Coast Guards all issued a photo ID, or are we talking about driver's licenses? Like, what type of photo ID are we talking about? That's the first question. This first supplementary. Second is this is about reasonable hours. Just like to know who determines the reasonableness of the event to connect to the reasonable hour, right? So my understanding is that the junior minister said that pretty much is going to depend on the event. I'd just like to know who determines. Is it the minister who determines if if 2 o'clock in the morning is a reasonable hour, or is it the director who determines that? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
So, Madam President, to clear up about the photo ID, as part of this act, they will be given cards and written on the back of their ID would state that they will have the powers to enter properties. When it comes to the bulk of water, in the tanks with the people that live around there. Um, the Bermuda Clean Air Coalition, BCAC, concerns related to the Clean Air Act and two, drinking water quality in residential tanks. Neither of these areas are covered by the Water Resource Amendment Act, which speaks to specifically to groundwater, pollution to ground and soil, which presents a risk to groundwater and also pollution to seawater. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources sets requirements for the monitoring, cleanup, and reporting of large spills of gasoline that occurred at Rubis and Ferry Reach in 2017. For example, 17,000 gallons. This spill down to the groundwater, but it was contained as a result of the remediation process that Darna required the landowners to follow under the Clean Air License. Darna has responded and overseen remediation for non-oil contamination since 1980, including Balco, the U.S. naval bases, other construction sites where oil was uncovered. Typically, Darna receives between 10 to 25 spills reported each year from facilities licensed under a different act, the Clean Air Act. Darna expects this reporting frequently to rise once the spills reporting, cleanup, monitoring, and requirements are enacted for all under the Water Resource Amendment Act. So typically, the director will authorize in daylight hours. The minister would have to authorize any nighttime activities. So the director would do it during the regular day, and the minister, if it's an emergency, at night. I think that's all, Madam President.
Mm-hmm. Senator Tucker, you have.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was just waiting, unless I missed it, just for clarification around whether the junior minister believes that the penalties were
penalty?
sufficient. Yes, I don't recall getting an answer to that.
Yes, it was. This is the same amount that was in other jurisdictions. So we went through to the AG's chairman. That was what was advised. And we do think that the penalty is fair.
Senator Karen Bell, Vice President.
Thank you, Madam President. I do actually have a supplementary then from my question, because I think I had a similar question in terms of that maximum penalty of 20,000. Could you provide some indication of what countries have that maximum penalty? When I looked, I couldn't find any other countries which had a maximum penalty that low. And I would note that in the United Kingdom in 2023, they actually got rid of the £250,000 maximum penalty for an unlimited. They removed that cap. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Bell.
Madam President, I don't have that with me, but I can send it in writing to all senators. But I do have one more thing to say. Madam President, I also want to note that Derna requires cleanup for up which for in 2017, Rubit's example of the 17,000 gallons of gasoline amounted to over $1 million and over 2 years of cleanup. So they do have to they fit the bill for cleaning up after their spillage. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Water Resource Amendment Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect to this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled Water Resource Amendment Act 2024 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill entitled the Water Resources Amendment Act 2024 do not pass. Is there any objection to the passage of the bill? No objection. Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. Thank you, all senators who have contributed to this bill. And thank you to the various officers who have come to assist Senate in addressing the questions. Moving on then now to our agenda. On item number 14, motions, there are none. Item number 15, congratulatory and or obituary speeches. Would any senator care to speak on these? Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. It's with deep sadness that I provide condolences to the family of Lisa Jackson, who tragically lost her life in a car crash in Miami, along with her mother several weeks ago. So Lisa worked for BFNM when I was the CEO there, and I got to know her very well. She's a lovely young lady, and she was driving her mother and her daughter to her daughter's first year of college when she was struck by a careless driver. And so she and her mother passed away instantly, and the daughter remains in a coma. So it's one of those incredible tragedies. It's really hard to fathom. Her funeral was last week, and just wanted to say I knew her very well. She was a lovely person. I spoke to her one-on-one so many times about the wishes for her daughter, and so I just want to wish condolences to her family and wish them all the best during this very, very difficult period. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator White. Would any other senator care to speak? I'm so sorry. Senator, sorry, Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to join Senator White in his comments in relation to Lisa Jackson. I knew her well as well. She was sunshine, and just want to join in those comments of condolence on her loss. She was a bright star, and we wish prayers for the recovery of her daughter Kamani. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Wilkerson. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Tucker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I too would like to associate with Senator White's comments and Senator Wilkinson's comments on the passing of Ms. Jackson and her mom. I would also like to express condolences to my family members on the passing of two of our family, Shakir Bascom, and as well as Robert Davis, otherwise known as Crumbug, was a cousin of mine and also a constituent. Thought Minister Darrell would have given me a side eye over there, but thankfully he didn't. and also I'd like to express condolences to the family of Mrs. Catherine Smith. So Doris Brooks and Trinae Riley, also her daughter and granddaughter. Um, and I would lastly like to express condolences to April Simmons and the family of our very own Mrs. Michelle Simmons on the passing of her husband, the Reverend Dr. Erskine Simmons, who I understand was a member of the secret progressive group which initiated the 1959 theater boycott that ended government sanctioned racial segregation in public places in Bermuda. So, those are the condolences I'd like to express on this occasion. And on a up note, I'd like to express congratulations. There's been a lot that has happened since we last met, but for the purposes of this conversation, the one thing that I do want to express is congratulations to the team at Humanity. Habitat for Humanity, Sheila Cooper and her team, on the completion of the residential treatment center at the former St. James Rectory in Somerset. And for those who do not know, that facility will be provided for as transitional living for people that are coming out of Maui. So, with that, Madam President, one last thing, which is congratulations to the Somerset Cricket Club on the winning, outright win of the Cup Match Cup. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator? I'm looking to see who it is at the back there. Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I too would like to join in with the condolences that have been already extended to the Jackson Lambert family on the passing of Lisa, as well as her mother and grandmother of Lisa's child. We wish her all the best in her recovery. I also too want to join in condolences for the Simmons family. Reverend Dr. Erskine Simmons, he was a lifeblood of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And he, in fact, was a founding member of Bright Temple AME Church in Warwick. He pastored at St. Luke AME Church in St. David's, and he also taught at Wilberforce University and became a pastor at Trinity AME Church at Wilberforce University. So our AME family certainly mourns his passing, and we wish the Simmons family all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. And Minister.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I'd just like to start with a few condolences to the community. First one was Mr. Devon Andre Signor. Many would know Vonnie, as they call him, a staple of the St. George's community. He attended many sporting events, and I know that there have been many tributes that have been paid to him in the community, and I just wanted to recognize that here in the Senate this morning. Also, Madam President, to the family, I want to send condolences to the family of Mr. Kenneth Can, also known as Kenny Can. I had the opportunity to be hosted by Mr. Can and his friends just at Cup Match up at the Somerset Cricket Club, and he was in good spirits and happy and laughing and jovial as everyone is on Cup Match. So I was shocked to see, while I was overseas, that he did pass a couple of weeks ago. My condolences to his wife, Terry Lynn, his good friends, and his colleagues over at the Ministry of Public Works and the Prospect Depot. And finally, in condolences, Madam President, my Senate colleague, for me, will missed this one, but I'd like to send condolences to the family of the matriarch of Cherrydale, and that is Miss Coralita Darrell. Many would know her as the wife of former parliamentarian, at one point a PLP parliamentarian, the Honorable Gilbert Darrell. Mrs. Darrell was his wife. She was known to the Cherrydale community as Mrs. Darrell, or to some, Aunt Darrell. She was known for always having baked goods, always being a motherly figure to all of us growing up in the neighborhood of Cherrydale. And it was good to see the community come together and the neighborhood come together as we laid her to rest a couple of weeks ago. Many would know her as a fitness guru. She would get up every single morning and ride her paddle bike down to John Smith Bay and go for an early morning swim. So I was unable to make it, but I know they did have a tribute at the beach along with the swim for Mrs. Coralita Darrow. And I would like to send condolences again um, to the entire neighborhood of Cherrydale, as well as her children, her grandchildren, and all that knew her. And on a community note, Madam President, I'm sure you would speak more about this, but I'd like to say a congratulations to the LCCA community and the charity, which I know you are a part of on the board of directors. I was privileged to be asked to participate in a tag day a couple of weeks ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. My grandmother, most of you would know, is Lucia Woolridge. Taught me from a very young age. When you tag, you must take the tag and pin it on individuals. So I took that responsibility very seriously, Madam President. And I do know many friends and family, unfortunately, in this community have had to rely on the assistance of LCCA for medical care to fly family members overseas. So it was a charity that I was happy to support, and I'm hoping that this year's Tag Day was a success, so the LCCA can continue to make these valuable contributions to our community. So thank you, Madam President, for you, the work that all of your board of directors do on that community. And once again, I was happy to help. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Darrell. Would any other Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually want to join a lot of my Senate colleagues in their condolences. But I also would ask that everybody keep Ms. Jackson's daughter in our prayers as she is still fighting for her life in Florida. So I ask that everybody keeps her up in prayers. I also want to give condolences to the family of Janet Nicholas, who passed away. Obviously, that was huge in Bermuda. We had the community rallying around to locate Miss Nicholas. So I want to give condolences to her husband, Patrick, her daughter, Janae, and Pierre, her son, and also her grandson, Javi. Um, I think Bermuda, honestly, that was such a horrible experience to have to go and look for somebody that was missing. But I think Bermuda actually came together, the Bermuda Police Force, the regiment, and members of this community rallying around to find Miss Nicholas. And I know that her family is extremely grateful for the love and support and located Miss Nicholas. So I want to give condolences to them as they buried their mom last week. And thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. Senator Ariana Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to pause to send condolences to the family of former Senator Linda Milligan White, her family on the loss. She was a close friend of my grandfather's, and so I had met her many, many years ago. She wasn't a woman of many words. She was very soft spoken, but she was always encouraging. She always carries herself well. And I think she's a woman that has made a lot of space for many of us who are here today. And so I do want to send condolences to her family.
Mhm. Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Douglas DeCuto, you have the floor.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam President. Obviously, I'd like to associate myself with the condolences to the Simmons family. I'd also like to congratulate the Bermuda Robotics team, which is at the International Robotics Challenge over in Greece right now. So I want to wish them a lot of luck. And I did have some sports-related ones, but I believe the minister really covered those quite well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator DeCuto. We covered everyone. I would just like to say a few words myself, and I'd like to associate myself with Senator Tucker. And there's senators who have spoken about the Reverend Dr. Erskine Simmons. As you all know, those of us who've been in the Senate, his, his wife was, was here as a senator and certainly vice president. And I know there are several members of the family, and I agree with Senator Tucker. He was he played a major role in Bermuda's past, breaking down barriers and certainly opening up the island and allowing people to, certainly for the theater boycott and the desegregation of our hotels, the theaters, and other public places. And he also, I think, was behind the road to Calvary that takes place at, in St. George's when that particular uh, place things takes place. It's really wonderful. The walk to Calvary is what he was behind. So he was a very active man right up to the end of his life, and he has a very supporting family. And I just like to express my condolences to him and to the entire family. I'd also like to express condolences to the family, many friends of Mrs. Marguerite Wong, the wife of Dr. Roger Wong, who also passed recently, and particularly to her and him and the children. Um, I would also like to follow on from the comment, oh, and also associate myself with the condolence for the Jackson family. That was, I think, all of Bermuda was just really taken aback by that tragedy. Um, so I'd like to associate myself with that. And with respect to the minister's comment about the charity to the LCCA, the charity does a tremendous amount of work, and I'm sure you all are aware that all the charities in Bermuda really are having a difficult time raising funds. Generally, people in Bermuda are having difficulties, but this charity, caters to people not only going overseas, but there are people who need help to purchase various things, whether it's wheelchairs or whatever, and even for food. So, yes, I have been associated for several years, and I really want to thank the minister, who was the first person on my list that I had asked for, people to assist in selling the tags on that day, and I understand he was up bright and early, 8 o'clock in the morning. So, Minister, I really want to not only on my own behalf for you responding to my request, but also certainly the LCCA management. Really, they really appreciated what you did and the fact that you did it so early in the morning. I mean, they were really taken back. I said, "Well, he's the minister who starts out early," so it was greatly appreciated. And as I said, charities are really having a difficult time now, and but we do what we can, and as do all other charities. So thank you all for that. And I think I have said enough at the moment. So I will now, we'll move on to the motion to adjourn. And I would like to, first of all, allow him,
Madam President,
yes,
I do know.
yes, you need, you need to
I,
move. I'm in a
I,
hurry this morning. I
I,
don't know why.
no worry.
We've got plenty of time.
No problem, Madam President. Madam President, I do know, ask that the Senate adjourn till Monday, September 30th,
Yes,
2024. Thank you, Madam President.
thank you. And following that, then we will move on to motion to adjourn. And I'd like to invite the Attorney General, Wilkerson, our newest senator, to have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Last night in a discussion with the Senate team, there was a question around whether I would be delivering a maiden speech. And then they said, no, you've been there before. You've missed your turn to have a maiden speech. So I'm not going to be doing that this morning, but I just want to use these 1 minute to say how encouraged I am by the warm welcome that I've had this morning from the entire chamber. And it's beautiful to be back in your presence, Madam Chair. President, and I'm looking forward to our work. The PLP has a lot to do, to accomplish, and we are on a mission for the betterment of Bermuda. So very much looking forward to being here. Madam President, thank you.
Thank you. And certainly I did welcome you. And this look, indicated that yes, we have worked together in this chamber before, and I'm looking forward to continuing the work. And congratulations on your appointments. Would any other senator, Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Earlier in the meeting, the junior minister of finance had committed to providing that the deficit in the contributory pension fund by the end of the meeting. So I'm sure she was just waiting to provide that number to us. It's forthcoming.
So
I can provide that now in the space if that's appropriate.
yes,
Yes, please.
certainly
Thank you,
you may.
Madam President.
Thank you, Senator White.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I have the numbers correct. So reflecting and looking at the year 2023, 2024, and at July 31st, 2024, total contributions which were collected were at $117,332,038, while the total benefits paid were $211,392,861, which resulted in a deficit of approximately 94 million. I believe it's $94,070,823.
Thank you. Can just it's actually that's for the particular year, but the accumulated balance is the amount of the deficit is what I was asking.
I don't have the specific number at this time.
Thank you. I allowed the question on the motion to adjourn because the junior minister had indicated that she would provide it at the end of the meeting. And so it was important for her to be given the opportunity to provide the answer. But would any other senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Senator Ariana Hudson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I will be brief today. Over the weekend, I was contacted by a young woman who's actually a friend who recently found out that she was pregnant. After considering her current circumstances, both she and her partner determined that it would not be in their best interest to continue with the pregnancy. Madam President, I cannot begin to express what I felt when I learned that her application had been denied, that the Therapeutic Abortion Committee would not be authorizing the termination of her pregnancy, and that she didn't know what to do. Of course, I immediately put on a few hats: concerned friend, concerned mother, and immediately after that, I became the concerned legislator. You see, Madam President, beyond the mental and physical toll, there was a strong element of financial hardship which led to this decision to terminate her pregnancy. For the benefit of those in this room and the listening public, I want to share an excerpt from the Criminal Code Act 1907. It speaks to medical terminations of pregnancy and indicates that therapeutic abortion should only proceed if, in the opinion of the medical practitioner, the pregnancy of such female person should be terminated as having, in its opinion, been the result of an incestuous relationship or of an offense under Section 323, 324, 325, or 326 upon the said female person, or in its opinion, the continuation of the pregnancy of such female person would or would be likely to endanger her life or health, or if in its opinion there's a substantial risk that if the child were born, it would suffer from such physical or mental abnormalities as to be seriously handicapped. And so, Madam President, I've been doing a lot of thinking and reflecting over the past few days. And that's because while some have, I've never personally heard of anybody being denied an abortion. Madam President, we often say that the problems we face in Bermuda are typically global issues, and so we in Bermuda are not removed from the challenges that women around the world are facing on a day-to-day basis. The truth is that women's ability to access safe and legal abortions are often restricted in law or in practice in many countries around the world. We know the US's position. We have Canada, and I believe that abortions are legal there with no gestational limits. When we look across the water at many European countries, we see that abortions are legal up to 12, 18, and in some cases over 20 weeks. In Asia, we see them take it a bit further, and I don't want to focus there in terms of terms. But what's really scary and actually disappointing is that even where abortion is permitted by law, there are many instances where women do not have access to safe abortion services. When we consider the myriad of reasons, this could be because of a lack of proper regulation, because of inadequate health services, or even political will in some cases. Madam President, I recognize that abortion is a highly emotional subject and one that excites deeply held opinions. However, equitable access to safe abortion services is first and foremost a human right, and this is why I feel compelled to bring this conversation today. I know that there are many different viewpoints as it relates to abortions and elective abortions and therapeutic abortions and the rest of it. I don't know what every other woman believes in this room, but I do know that Senator Hudson believes that every woman should have the right to choose. I also know that Senator Lindsey Simmons, she agrees. But I hope that my comments today will force each of us to consider what we believe. And then once we've determined what we believe, to take it a step further and decide whether we'd like to see our government advance legislative amendments that will preserve a woman's right to choose. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson. Would any other senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Senator Kieran Bell, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to say that I would like to associate myself with the comments that were just made by Senator Hodgson, and she now knows what my views are, which 100% support hers. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other senator care to speak? Hearing none, then, senators, the Senate stands adjourned until next week, September 30th. Thank you for